The metallic crunch of the scissors was heard louder than any yell. Cold, sharp, fatal. One swift cut through a crown of shiny black ringlets, and Jasmine Carter's existence was altered in a matter of seconds. Ringlets of her own dark hair coiled to the spotless floor of Sterling Academy's history room. For a brief moment, the classroom was drawn into a freezing silence, so dense, so abnormal, that even the morning birds outside appeared to quiet. 20 eyes went still. Some were wide with shock, others glinting with sadistic humor. A few skipped out of sight, embarrassed, but mum. None moved. None spoke. Standing in the midst of them was Jasmine, 17, genius, and standing visibly in shock, yet still, most certainly commanding. She did not scream. She did not sob. She stood still, her hand creeping towards the back of her neck, where once tidy ponytail now cut off in a jagged, choppy line. Justin Sinclair, crown prince of Sterling Academy, loomed behind her. Blonde, arrogant to the point of entitlement, and heir to a legacy of riches wrapped in ancient money. He smiled like a conjurer who had just performed a vicious trick, scissors still gripped in his fist. "Just having some fun," he growled, though now his voice trembled enough to show he was nervous. Jasmine's dark, rebellious eyes went to the sole grown-up in the room, Mr. David Matthews, the history teacher, mid-50s, Ivy League diploma on the wall, his back to them all, chalk spiking rhythmically on the board. Whether or not he had overheard the cut, the shock, or Justin's superior laugh was immaterial. He had simply elected not to turn around. "Now, as I was saying," he droned, "the Treaty of Versailles was a turning point in European history." Jasmine slowly stood up. Her low, unflinching voice broke the act of normalcy. "Mr. Matthews, I'd like to report an assault." He froze, chalk suspended in midair. Still, he did not turn. "Jasmine, sit down. Let's not overreact. It's just hair." The classroom fell silent. Students looked at each other. Some were whispering. Others simply waited and watched to see what would transpire next. Jasmine did not sit. "Should I pick up the hair on the floor as evidence for the police?" she asked, her tone cool and calm. "Or will the investigators have no problem finding it?" Justin's smirk failed. Mr. Matthews at last turned, the expression on his face between irritation and alarm. "That won't be necessary. Let's just all move on." "No," Jasmine cut in. "You don't get to erase this." The silence drew out, thick with connotation. Jasmine's words weren't boisterous, but they were impactful. The kind of impactful that swelled your chest and weighed on your conscience. Her gaze scanned her classmates, some clearly uneasy, others completely apathetic. She knew this wasn't simply about hair. It never was. "You think because I'm the only black girl here on scholarship," she told Justin, her eyes fixed on him, "that I'm disposable? That I won't fight back?" Justin shrugged. It was a joke. Jasmine's face iced over. A joke is a punchline, not an assault. Mr. Matthews, who was now clearly flustered, moved forward. "Jasmine, stop this. You're being provocative." That word hurt. Provocative. As if her own existence was the issue. As if doing well in a room constructed for others was a transgression. Her hands were clenched at her hips, but her tone was silky. "So let me get this straight," she said. "You're saying that because I am a high-achieving black student, I should be assaulted and publicly embarrassed, and I should be willing to take it as a joke?" The class was silent. "Is that what we're teaching here at Sterling?" she added. No one answered. No one had the courage. With slow steps, Jasmine picked up her books and left the classroom. Every step was purposeful. Every step sounded louder than the previous one. When the door closed behind her with a soft click, it was like a glass had broken on the floor of the classroom. The silence that was left behind wasn't peace, it was terror. Justin stood uneasily, scissors gripped like a smoldering matchstick. His friends, Blake, Emma, Derek, glanced around for someone to share a laugh. Nobody did. Mr. Matthews went back to the board. "Let's proceed." But his tone was more insipid now, his control shattered. In the hallway outside the classroom, Jasmine's breathing was rapid. Her hands trembled, but barely. She pulled out her phone, pressed record. "Sterling Academy," she said, her voice crisp, "where excellence from students such as myself is seen as a threat." At the end of the day, her video had 87,000 views. By morning, 2.3 million. Former students spoke up. Tales of discrimination, suppression, favoritism. Alumni opined. Local media contacted her. Jasmine, whether she liked it or not, had become a symbol. Within a week, there was an independent investigation announced. Jasmine was interviewed. So were a number of other students who had suffered lesser slights, veiled racism, and bureaucratic indifference. What was revealed was more terrible than anyone could have imagined. Dozens of grievances had been buried. Teachers who coddled affluent white students had been shielded. The Board of Trustees had squashed internal reform to maintain Sterling's reputation. Justin's father, Robert Sinclair, had donated $4 million to the school over the past 10 years. Mr. Matthews paid a yearly bonus based on student compliance, not academic performance, obedience. 10 staff members were suspended. Mr. Matthews resigned, publicly. Justin was expelled. But that was just the surface. Jasmine, backed by civil rights attorneys, filed a lawsuit. Sterling Academy scrambled to defend itself. By month's end, the headmaster resigned. 2 board members were indicted for obstruction. Robert Sinclair's financial records were subpoenaed. And Jasmine? She stood before cameras, poised and unapologetic. "This was never just about me," she said. "It was about every student who was told they didn't belong, every teacher who chose silence, every system that thinks power means immunity. We're done being quiet." Sterling Academy remained standing, but only just. Enrollment fell 40%. A number of donors withdrew funding. The school now has annual equity audits and a new principal, an Afro-Latina teacher named Dr. Reina Torres was hired. Jasmine graduated cum laude. She was accepted at Yale, Harvard, and Columbia. She attended Howard University. She gives talks at conferences today. Writes. Shows younger students how to battle systems created that never existed for them. And the curls? They grew back. Thicker. Fuller. Unashamedly natural. Because Jasmine Carter was never simply a girl with gorgeous hair. She was a reckoning. Several months after the lawsuit resolved, Sterling came under additional fire. A whistleblower from the financial office disclosed a hidden legacy influence ledger in which students from influential families were graded more favorably. Journalists caught wind. An expose ensued. Jasmine was invited to serve on a state education board. She accepted. She understood the battle was far from over. It was merely changing. Justin, on the other hand, was charged with misdemeanor assault. His father's law firm advocated diversion programs. Jasmine didn't argue. She thought that justice wasn't merely punishment, it was change. And what about Mr. Matthews? He disappeared from academia altogether. But in some education circles, his name became a warning. Jasmine came back to Sterling again, not as a student, not as a victim, but as a guest speaker. She stood in the auditorium beneath a sign that said, "Equity, courage, truth." The students who had watched her once with amusement or sympathy now watched with admiration. Some with regret, but all with respect. She started her speech not with rage, but with clarity. "This is not a story of revenge," she said. "It's a story about change. We can't redo what occurred, but we can right all that comes afterward. The ovation was on its feet, and it was for a long time. But Jasmine didn't smile for her audience. She smiled because a door had been kicked open, and she was holding it wide for others to enter. Years later, Jasmine Carter's name is known for the fight for educational equity and justice reform. She's now a civil rights lawyer, starting a nonprofit that guides marginalized young people who are struggling through elite institutions. Her Sterling case is taught in law schools. Netflix greenlights a limited series about her life. And throughout, Jasmine stays grounded, still fiercely defending her roots, still not afraid to take on controversial power. She comes back each year to Sterling Academy, which has been revolutionized. Diversity is not a box to check, it's the foundation. Each time she passes by the history room where it all started, she doesn't blink. Instead, she smiles. Because every revolution starts with a spark, and she was the fire. Jasmine's mobilization encouraged students nationwide, at private schools and public schools too. Young black and brown children organized, spoke out, and told their stories. Hashtags derived from Jasmine's words proliferated on protest signs and TikToks. Colleges began to change their internal reporting practices. School boards reconsidered their codes of conduct. Jasmine's name, once hushed in Sterling's hallways with disgust, became a synonym for courage. When PBS approached Jasmine for a documentary, she was reluctant at first. But the filmmakers, a team of all women of color, gained her confidence. The Crown and the Scissors debuted to national praise. Interviews with students, teachers, and whistleblowers created a raw and nuanced portrait. The documentary was made mandatory in several teacher training programs around the nation. With the settlement funds, Jasmine established the Carter Equity Foundation. Its first project, legal assistance for students who faced racial discrimination in elite educational environments. Its second, a scholarship fund in honor of forgotten students deprived of opportunity. In a matter of a year, they had filed and settled 5 additional cases. Out of the blue, Jasmine opened a letter of meticulous cursive. It was from Mr. Matthews. He apologized, not only for what he'd done, but for all that he'd let happen. He said of his shame, his resignation, and that he'd started working at an adult literacy center. Jasmine didn't respond, but she retained the letter. Justin Sinclair resurfaced in the public 5 years later. In a podcast episode called Reckonings, he discussed how the event had caused him to consider his privilege and ignorance. He gave credit to Jasmine for having saved him from being a man he would have despised. The episode became viral, not because he had been forgiven, but because Jasmine occupied the last few minutes, shocking everybody. "I think people can change," she said, "but they have to earn it." Sterling Academy created a restorative justice program in Jasmine's memory. Not everyone embraced it. Some parents withdrew their children, but others enrolled due to it. On the opening day of the program, Jasmine addressed truth-telling, dignity, and courage. Her former classmates sat in the front row, some crying. Jasmine started mentoring a student named Mariah, feisty, brilliant, and once suspended for standing up for herself in class. Jasmine recognized her younger self in Mariah. Under her mentorship, Mariah had her own campaign. Sterling, now an academy that bred revolutionaries, stood with her. Years later, Jasmine's own daughter would tread Sterling's corridors, not in dread, but proudly. Her name, Legacy. Her curls, tight and wild. Her mother's flame, unmistakable. She discovered the scissors, now enshrined in a case with a plaque. The day silence was cut. Change does not go in straight lines, but it does. And Sterling, once a bastion of privilege, became an icon of change, because one girl did not sit down, because she cut through silence, because her name was Jasmine Carter, and the world would never forget.